So I'm now in live code and I'm going to write the program for the problem that I illustrated in part 1. I've set up sort of the front end on it. I've got a button, one of these things, which I dragged on, and I called it find average height. And I also brought in a text entry field here to put the answer in, the actual average height. And on this button I'm going to type in some script, so I'm going to edit the script for that button. So in here, first of all, I'm going to list the variables that I'm going to use, the sort of storage locations that I illustrated in part 1. And if you remember, I had a counter for counting which plant I was on. I had the plant height that I was reading in. I had a total, and I also had the average height that I calculated at the end. So I've listed those at the top of the program, and I'm going to say when the mouse is clicked on the button here on mouse up, if you remember, there were various things that happened. First of all, I started total off at 0. Now, to do that, I could just say put 0 into total, but it's probably a good idea to get into the habit of using handlers for each of the little tasks, just to break the program up, and it just makes it easy to manage as your programs get longer. So I'm actually going to cut that from there, and I'm going to put that in its own handler. So I'm going to say on. Now I need a name for this handler, so I'm going to call it initialize total. And I'm going to put that line of code in there. To make that handler happen, I need to make sure it goes in what you might call the main body of the program here, so that when this line is encountered, it will go off and carry out this handler, and then it'll come back here. Now the next thing that happened was I started counting through from 1 to 5, and I read in some plant heights and I added them onto the total. So I'm going to type in a fixed loop in live code, and the syntax is repeat with, and then you have your variable that's going to do the counting, and I called it counter, but you can call it anything you want, equals 1, and then the word 2, 5. And that is the syntax. You can't really change that. It has to have the word repeat, and then the word with, and then your counting variable, and then your start value, and your finish value. And you've got the word 2 in there and an equal sign. And if I press enter, I'll get end repeat coming up to tell sort of handily does that for me. So I'll just make a bit of space in there. And you remember there were two things that happened. The first one was that I got the plant height, so let's write that in as a little handler call. So I'm going to need down here my own little handler for plant height. I'm going to move these down just so they're out of the way a little bit. And then I had add to the average, sorry, add to the total. So I need a handler for that. And finally, let's just tidy this up a little bit here. So I had initialized my total to 0. I've got my loop going from 1 to 5, and then I got the plant height, added it onto total, and I went round and round there from 1 to 5, getting the 5 plant heights, and when I'd finally finished, I calculated the average. So I'll come down here.